The message was cryptic. Under attack. Must defend. AJ addressed the computer. TAC. Determine the origin of the signal. Unknown. Okay, keep trying. He picked up his toolkit and headed back to the lab. The virus was benign to humans but deadly to the fungus. Sarah would correct her husband when he called it moss, like everyone else. He was an engineer, not a scientist. The lab pod airlock hissed open, and Sarah spun around on her chair. She bit her lip, trying to hide her excitement. Look! Through the foot-thick glass, the lush carpet of green wasn't as green as it should be. A klaxon sounded. She looked at the panel and let out a sigh. Don't tell me. The filters, again? He patted his toolbox and went out to the airlock. As it hissed shut, he opened the control unit over the door, and he gasped in horror. Moss. It was everywhere. Another alarm. Lab 1 detachment protocol enabled. 10, 9, 8. TAC! Abort! 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 They both frantically tried to open the airlock. The clamps thudded, and a loud hiss marked the pod's departure. They looked helplessly at one another as she drifted silently away. Signal origin identified. Lab 1. Hello and welcome to The Bad Spot, an actual play podcast where I, Matt Risby, and I alone am playing through Ironsworn Starforged. This week's Tale from the Drift was from Lee Newton, and I want to say a huge, heartfelt thank you to Lee for a frankly wonderful submission. And he said in his email that he drew inspiration for his tale from the episodes with Keelan and Santos and the moss that was being developed as some kind of weird super weapon. So it's nice that he can pull from inspiration from the story that we're making together for his own tale, and I want to thank him once again for doing so. It's at this point that I'd like to say that I'm also probably only going to do 24 episodes this season, and I have submissions for the next 6 weeks already in place. So if you want to roll some dice and write something for me to read at the beginning of a future episode, then you will have to get a wriggle on. As usual, the submission guidelines and contact details are on screen now. And whilst I have you, why don't you leave a like, subscribe, and click the little bell icon so you can follow along with the campaign each and every week. Last time, we followed the fallout from the destruction of Sepulchre, where Azrael Vega and the Soulbinders lay waste to the former Clanthorn stronghold. The Eclipse and its motley crew manages to pull out of the hangar just in time before jumping to the relative safety of the drift. Blake Sutton has taken control of the navigation and leads them to Sleeper Station 6, a remote outpost used by Blake and other Kraken Clan members for emergency refueling and resupplying. The station is unmanned, but they are able to get the conduit basic medical attention, seemingly stabilizing her. Archer, and especially Luna, are wary of this alliance of convenience with Blake, and are expecting to be double-crossed at any moment. Whilst attempting to scavenge up supplies, Archer's paranoia leads him to hack the station's central computer, where he intercepts a transmission from Blake to the Kraken leadership. The message is a request for evacuation for Blake and one other person. Archer assumes this is him, and he is going to be once again forced to open the gates. But Blake reveals that she is taking the conduit to safety, as Archer has a much more perilous task at hand. Having established their current location in the Forge and aware of their untenable safety in this sector, Cole and his crew realise if they are to reach their stranded crew, they must cross a notoriously perilous stretch of wild space known as the Spine of Kronos. So before we actually do anything, we need to regrettably take care of some housekeeping. We are playing a game, after all, and I need to keep track of a few things that possibly I may have neglected. I know what you're thinking, that doesn't sound like me. Shocking, I know. But we do have some vows that are in progress and also some relationships to develop, so let's have a look at those now. So starting with our relationship with the conduit, last time we updated this was just after we busted her out of her cell on Sepulchre, and a reasonable amount has happened between now and then. When you develop your relationship, it's not a move that involves rolling any dice. You just need to meet any of these criteria, and looking down this list, I think that getting her out of Sepulchre and getting her medical attention, despite Archer's somewhat ham-fisted, unsuccessful attempts at doing so himself, definitely count as standing with them against hardship. So what we're going to do is we are going to mark progress on the conduit track, taking that up to 4 out of 10. Now let's turn our attention to the vows we have running. First up, we have find the lens using the iron gates. Now, to progress a vow, we need to look at the reach a milestone move. And like develop your relationship, this doesn't involve rolling any dice. You simply mark progress if you meet any of these criteria. Now, the last time we marked progress on this vow was at the start of the season, just after Archer stepped through the gate and disappeared. And he had no idea, I had no idea where that was going to take him. But here we are. This vow is extreme, meaning it is going to be very, very slow progress. But I do feel like we have made some progress. And looking at the list of criteria, I would actually say that we have done a reasonable amount. I think that Archer is realizing that he can, to a degree, successfully navigate the Iron Gate network, albeit in an admittedly limited sense. And I think that definitely counts as gaining meaningful insight. As does, I think, making the mystical or psychic or telekinetic, whatever you want to call it, connection with the shadow. Because Archer's visions only started after he learned how to use the gates. So he's kind of tying this all together somehow, kind of figuring out that it is all in some way connected. And I also think that in terms of defeating a notable foe, Clan Thorn has, in a sense, been defeated. Not that they've been kind of like eliminated as a threat, that isn't true, but they are unable to strike effectively at this moment. They are in disarray, a rudderless ship. And although Archer doesn't know that, I think that it definitely counts. So I think that is 3 lots of progress. So that's going to be 2 ticks each time, meaning we are now up to 3.5 boxes out of 10. And I think that there is going to be a degree of overlap here between this vow and our background vow. Not a lot, but there is going to be some kind of like shared progress, I think. And gaining that deeper understanding of how the network operates, I think, brings us one small step, admittedly, closer to finding the professor. So I think we can mark a solitary tick on our background vow, bringing us up to 2 out of 10. So that only leaves our most recent vow, which is the one that Archer swore to help Cole retrieve his surviving crewmates. And I think that getting them off the planet and to Sepulchre, and then kind of through Sepulchre and to the sleeper station, definitely counts as overcoming a series of obstacles. So I'm going to say that we can mark progress twice for that. And I'm also considering whether or not learning where we are in terms of like situated in the forge itself, and learning that we have to cross the spine of Kronos counts as gaining valuable insight. And you know what? I'm feeling fairly charitable. So what I'm going to say is that definitely does count. So in total, that is 3 progress. So we're up to 3 out of 10. So I think that just about brings us up to date with everything. And I feel like I need to stop in and do this every now and then, because I never really remember to update these when it's kind of relevant. And I actually have to kind of trawl through a lot of like my notes and listen to bits of old episodes to kind of figure out where I was with the progress on this. And it's a bit of a pain, but it's just, I don't really want to break the flow of the drama and the tension of the episodes to kind of insert these bits of kind of mechanical game things in. So you'll have to forgive me for that, but like, never worry. I will always remember at some point to update these bits and pieces and keep you posted of where we are. So that is that. Okay, back to the action. So we've established that we have to cross this incredibly dangerous stretch of wild space to get where we need to be. And we have to do that because going back through the Corvus Breach, the sector that we've kind of been in this whole time, would mean near certain capture and near certain death. Although that said, I've realised in this past week that no one here, none of these characters actually know that. Because with Vega having given up on capturing Archer and switched allegiances, and Clan Thorn in apparent kind of disarray, it would actually be a pretty good time to travel back across the breach and avoid capture, actually, because, it's probably the safest point in this entire story they could do that. And this is a classic case of if only the characters could read the script, right? But there you go. Our heroes are trading what they think is near certain death for maybe disappear. Who knows? It's not a great trade, but there you go. And also, I want to just take this opportunity to get ahead of any pedants who might be listening. And who might question why they're choosing to do this. And it's pretty much mainly because they have next to no supply, very little in the way of fuel or whatnot, and crossing the spine is at the moment by far the quickest way to get where they need to be, if they can survive doing so, that is. So what I want to do first is, because the spine of Kronos has this kind of notoriety, what I want to do is I want to roll up a few things that any experienced spacer or traveler might have heard about the spine of Kronos. Now, I'm going to do that by rolling a few times on the Spacebound Perils Oracle. And I'll preface this by saying that all of these will be things that Archer, Cole, and Blake will have at least heard. And that is not to say any of these are actually true. I'm just trying to establish a few myths and rumours about this place. And certainly some of them could well be true. Others could well be wild, rampant speculation. And we're going to play to find out what is true and what isn't. And we'll definitely kind of add more and more stuff along the way. But firstly, I want to just establish what they may have heard. So let's roll a few times and see what we get. 14. Dust clouds imperil navigation or conceal foes. 37 is isolation or fear presses in. 63 is phantom signals suggest a lurking foe. And 64, pirates hunt for prey. Okay, I think that's a good mix. And I'm going to just keep all of those rumours and, make them things that we have collectively heard. But what I'm also going to do is this. I'm going to give the spine of Kronos a location theme. Now, we've used location themes before on this show, and they are a really great way to thematically tie all these kind of elements together. We had an infested jungle on Damu in our very first few episodes, and we've also explored derelicts that have been ruined or haunted. And looking at the available options for location themes, I think it makes perfect sense to give this place the theme of chaotic. Now, the chaotic theme says reality is corrupted or warped in this place, which I think is a perfect fit for something like this. It gives us latitude to explore all kinds of weird and dangerous stuff, and we can really kind of pop off on those rolls and come up with all manner of strange space nonsense. So I like this idea very, very much. So looking at these rumours, let's maybe flesh out some of what we may have heard based on these things. So dust clouds. Now, I actually think we've rolled that up before. That sounds very familiar. I can't possibly think of when it could have been. I imagine that will come back to me. But I think that covers a lot of ground. I think you've got this kind of like zero visibility, extreme environmental conditions making it hard to navigate, meaning you get lost easily, turned around, or your equipment gets fried that leaves you vulnerable. Lots and lots of possibilities. Now, whether those clouds are natural, supernatural, or made by someone or something for a nefarious purpose, who knows? Isolation or fear? Maybe spacers tell tales of those who have ventured into this area and have survived their kind of short exploration of the spine, that they are forever changed. They have been driven to despair by the sheer magnitude of the horrors they witnessed inside. There's something in there that has driven these people to the edge of their sanity. Very much could be feasible, could very much also be hokum. Phantom signals suggest a lurking foe. So maybe passing craft have picked up strange transmissions coming from inside, which could be lost ships sending an SOS, siren calls trying to lure you in, spectral echoes from the past, possibly just an old wives' tale. Who knows? I certainly don't. And pirates, I do love a good pirate. We haven't had any pirates, I don't think, in this show yet. And, you know, piracy is rife in the Outlands. But what sort of pirates would make the spine of Kronos, a place like this, the base of their operations? It's a pretty dangerous place, so they must be pretty dangerous too, I wager. Did a famous pirate crew venture too far and become corrupted by the chaotic energies of this place? Who knows? I don't. All of these rumours could be true, and all of these rumours could be nonsense. Could just be an incredibly perilous, dangerous stretch of space to traverse for natural reasons, but has acquired this reputation that strikes fear into the hearts of everyone who dares consider making this journey. Maybe. Who knows? But I think we've given ourselves a really interesting set of parameters in which to explore this place. And also probably to die. So yeah, that is that. So let's think about how we're going to do this. This crossing is going to be the move, undertake an expedition. And when you make this move, you need to firstly give it a name and give it a rank. So the name is just going to be the Spine of Kronos. And it stands to reason, rank-wise, that this should be very difficult. But we are taking this route because it's the quickest one available. And if we make it extreme or epic, then we could spend 3, 4, 5 sessions just trying to make headway. And this could drag on for weeks and weeks, longer than it should. Now, that could be interesting, but I am very wary and always concerned about things outstaying their welcome from a story perspective. So what I'm actually going to do is make this formidable. Now, that means realistically, this expedition is going to be 7 to 8 stages before I can think of safely trying to wrap things up and end the expedition. But what I'm going to do is, to kind of balance out how hard this is I'm probably going to be a bit more mindful of how punishing I make weak hits and misses. And I think that is what is going to give this place a sufficient sense of danger, kind of how severe the consequences are. And I think that maybe trumps how long it's going to take. So I'm going to go with formidable. So that's the expedition laid out. And before we kind of embark upon it, I just want to envision something real quick. It's the next morning after they arrived at Sleeper Station 6. They have all managed to get varying degrees of rest and recuperation. But for Archer, it was a restless evening spent sleeping in his bunk aboard the Eclipse. And what has been weighing on him is the responsibility. For years, he has been traveling the Forge alone, and he has been through many dangerous places, navigated his way through many perilous stretches of space, fraught with hazards. But now he finds himself responsible for others. He is leading them, for want of a better phrase, and leading them into danger. And that doesn't sit well with him. Archer is a rational man, a man of science, a man of logic. He's analytical. But even he believes some of what he's heard about the spine of Kronos. Not all of it. He figures that he can pass the likely from the fantastical, but he has also seen some pretty wild phenomena in his time. But having recently travelled through magic, time-warping space portals, he knows that anything is possible in the Forge. Cole and his crew are loading what meagre supplies they have been able to scrounge together onto the Eclipse. And they herd the drakes noisily back into the cargo hold as they prepare the best they can to embark on this dangerous journey. And as they make the last of their preparations, Archer decides he's going to check in on the conduit. Her vitals are stable now, and she looks peaceful, despite how serious her injury is. And she's sort of semi-conscious. Her eyes have cracked open a little bit, and she's aware of what's happening around her, even though she's far too weak to get up and move around. She's hooked up to this med station, and she will be until she can be evacuated by whoever is coming for her and Blake. But she's alive, and for Archer, that's enough. And as he stands over her, their eyes meet, and he gently squeezes her hand to offer some kind of reassurance. And I think that we are going to make a connection move here. I feel like that even though these two haven't actually shared that much screen time, they have actually been through a lot. And I think that Archer has gone out on a limb for her, and she's probably starting to think that the way that things have gone for her recently mean that she might need to reassess some of her life choices. She's been saved by someone she has double-crossed in the past. First, he came to break her out of prison, and second, he scraped her off the hangar floor and dragged her to the relative safety of wherever they are now. He must have wanted something from her, and it's not revenge, because he could have just left her to die or to rot in jail, but he didn't. And that means something. But before they can figure out what that means, they are having to part once again. So what we're going to do here is we are going to make the move, test your relationship, which says when your relationship with a connection is tested through conflict, betrayal, or circumstance, roll plus heart. And this is definitely circumstance, right? They are going their separate ways, but there is need for some kind of reconciliation. The story of their relationship is stopping mid-sentence, and they both recognize that there is more to be written, more to be said. But for now, they must part. So let's make this move, rolling plus heart. On a strong hit, you can develop your relationship. And we'll do that by saying that they are sharing a profound moment, this unspoken thing between the two of them. So up to 5 out of 10 on that relationship now. And I think I also want to take this opportunity to do something story-wise here. And I want the conduit to give Archer something that might help him. Because I think that despite her questionable, dubious morality and her business practices, the conduit is savvy enough to recognize when a good deed deserves another. And maybe she's starting to think about whether those good deeds should lead to being leveraged into something else. That's perhaps not the way she should do things in the future. But anyway, I think she's going to give him something. And that something is going to be information. So let's envision this. The conduit lets go of Archer's hand and gestures to his satchel. And she weakly makes this motion like typing with a finger on Archer's palm. And he figures she means his datapad, so he gets it out and holds it up to her. And she slowly reaches up to her hairline, where she pushes back her loose black curls to reveal 3 metal-like studs protruding from her scalp. She pulls at one of these studs, and Archer sees her remove a thin strip of metal from just below her skin, no longer than a toothpick. She reaches over and slides it into one of the inputs on the datapad. She presses her palm against the screen and then taps in some details. She then pulls out the metal strip, snaps it in 2, and then her hands drop to her sides, and she is completely exhausted by the effort that took. She looks at Archer one last time, and through her mask, he can see the faintest of smiles. And then her eyes close, and she drifts back to sleep. And what that information is, well, we'll find that out at some unspecified point in the future, I'm sure. Because for now, I'm just going to bank it. In this moment, right now, Archer has a treacherous journey to undertake, and we are very nearly ready to do that. But I think that I want to have a quick exchange with Blake first. So, Archer leaves the conduit, and he's doing one last check to something or other on the outside of the eclipse. And Blake approaches. For the first time, Archer can see that she looks tired. Tired of everything. This is where fighting a forever war gets you. Constantly on the run, constantly being on her guard. It's got to grind you down, and it looks like it has. She will fight another day. It's what she knows. It's maybe all she knows. She's licking her wounds and getting ready to get back into the fight. She leans over and passes Archer a wrench. Just the right sort of wrench for what he's trying to fix. And she says, "I hope you know what you're doing, for all our sakes." Archer looks at her and says, "What will you do?" She says, "The Thorns will retaliate. The Circle have their venerable leader back, if they survived, of course. 3 clans now vie for control of the Corvus Breach. I will do what I have always done. Fight." And Archer nods. But he can't imagine having to live like that, exist like that. It must be soul-crushingly exhausting. And she moves over to him and says, "Should you make it across the spine, you will find little respite in the Delphian flux. The clans have long since lost control of that sector." And Archer kind of says, "Well, that sounds comforting." Blake continues, "The girl said the Soulbinders are coming for the lens too?" Archer nods. Blake says, "If that is true, then much rests on your shoulders, Archer Barlow. You must reach it before they do. The Thorns would use it to dominate and conquer. The Soulbinders would only use it to purge and destroy." And Archer kind of tries not to feel the pressure of all that expectation. Blake puts her hand on his shoulder, her eyes unblinking, fixed into his, and says, "You must reach it before them." And Archer finds some resolve from somewhere and says, "I will." And he turns and begins up the ramp. And Blake says, "Farewell and safe passage." He nods in acknowledgement and steps aboard, and the ramp follows him up. He passes the drakes that are roosting in the cargo hold. And when I say roosting, I mean they have trashed the place, trying to kind of nest down. They kind of honk in unison as he passes. He briefly pauses to give his drake a little chin scritch, which it gratefully receives. And as he works his way through the ship, his heart begins to pick up the pace, and he feels something like butterflies in his stomach. He's nervous. This is a dangerous thing they are about to embark on, and as he enters the cockpit, his nerves intensify as his expectant crew look back at him, awaiting his command. He is instantly uncomfortable, but he is trying his utmost not to let it show. Cole and his crew man the pilots and navigation stations, whilst Luna is sat in her chair, legs lazily dangling over the armrest as she yawns, bored. There's a long, awkward pause before Archer says, "Okay, let's go." And Luna can't quite repress her smirk. And as the engines fire, she looks at him and gives a mock salute and says, "Aye, aye, Captain." And the Eclipse rises up and out of the sleeper station, hanging for a moment in the never-ending expanse of stars, before it begins to glow red and purple as the E-drive kicks in and it jumps into the drift. So we're going to say that this first jump isn't going to count as part of this expedition. I think it's just going to get us to the start. It's just going to get us where we need to be, and that is where we will cut to. The Eclipse has been hanging motionless in space for just over an hour. Its radiator spools are uncoiled out in front of it as they cool. The E-drive is very nearly charged. Cole eyes the meter anxiously, wanting this thing to be ready, but at the same time dreading the moment that they are going to make their first jump. Because that first jump is going to be into the vast, ominous wall of dust that takes up their entire view. They are waiting at the very fringe of the spine of Kronos. In every direction except behind them, the grey-brown swirling clouds stretch on and infinitely on. Occasionally, flashes of dim light can be seen through the murk, coinciding with the instruments on board glitching. The look on Archer's face could only be described as grim as they wait. This long, interminable wait. Luna looks like the very definition of ambivalent, but she has done an exceptional job of channeling her nerves into her fingers, which have been slowly pulling at the threads of her clan Kraken poncho in distraction. As the final light on the E-drive charge flicks on, the red light on Griff's charging station lights up. And then there's this audible, collective intake of breath in the cockpit. And now, more than ever, Archer feels this weight of all the lives upon him. He needs to do something. He needs to say something, anything. He fixes his eyes on the swirling bank of cloud in front of them. What eldritch horrors await them inside, who can tell? They are jumping into the unknown, and Archer is responsible for leading him out the other side. He steels himself and says clearly, with resolve, "Get in, get out, stay alive." And with that, he nods to Cole to punch the E-drive. The Eclipse starts to shake, purple and red wisps trailing behind it as it streaks across the black expanse and in a flash disappears into the dust. Thank you a million times. Thank you for watching. Please like this video, subscribe if you've not done so already, and click the little bell icon so you can be notified as soon as the next video drops. I'll be back next week, but until then, it's farewell and safe passage.